Good evening, members of the Council.
Good evening, Madam Mayor.
Can I ask the Council to join me in saying the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Please be seated. I have received apologies from Councillor James Clinton and Councillor Luke Johnson. Are there any other apologies for absence?
Councillor Zada, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So moving on to the declarations of interest. Any prior declarations of interest made under the Members' Code of Conduct have been published online. I now invite members to declare any additional interests.
There appear to be none, Madam Mayor.
So moving on to the minutes. I move that the minutes of the meetings held on 26th of February and the 4th of March 2024 to be confirmed as a correct record and signed. Does the Council agree? That is carried. This Friday, 19th of April, I am delighted to be hosting the Mayor's Ball and Civic Awards at the Copthorne Hotel in Brierley Hill. The event is sponsored by Midtherm, Jewson and HP & Son Construction and Restoration. Thank you to those who have purchased tickets as we look to continue to raise funds for my charities this year. In addition, we will be celebrating some of the great unsung community heroes of the borough in the Civic Awards. If anybody would like to donate items to the tombola, these would be greatly received. This is the last meeting of the Council before the municipal elections. Councillors Margaret Aston, Chris Barnett, Ruth Buttery, Michael Evans, Jonathan Elliott, Marion Howard, Adrian Hughes, Angus Lees and Quadazada will not be standing for re-election on the 2nd of May. I'd like to place on record my appreciation of the dedicated public service given by those members and express my sincere best wishes for the future. Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Patrick Harley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll try and pay quick tribute to those members who I've had the good fortune to work with over the years. First of all, Margaret Aston. Known Margaret for many, many years. A good local community councillor who has always done her best for her local residents. Margaret, I wish you a long and happy retirement. Then moving on to Chris Barnett. I think it's a great shame that you're stepping down from the council. This authority, irrespective of party colours, needs more members like yourself. So I think it's a shame that you're stepping down, but I'm sure you have your reasons. Then on to Ruth Buttery, Madam Mayor. It's a bit like getting divorced with this one. She's nagged me more than my wife does. She has been a brilliant cabinet member for Children's Services. She inherited a department that needed a lot of change, a lot of reform. Ruth has overseen that with a brilliant director in Catherine Driscoll. But Ruth has driven a lot of that change, and she's such a determined person. And I think she's brought a great deal of respect to that role as Cabinet Member for Children's Services. In my 20 years on this authority, irrespective of what political colour we are, I think she's the best Cabinet Member for Children's Services I've seen in this chamber. Moving on to Mike Evans, what can I say about Mr Sedgley? Always diligent, always representing his community. Mike has worked tirelessly over many years, not just for Sedgley, but also for the Conservative group right across the borough, and you'll be truly missed, Michael. Then on to John Elliott. Took you a long time to get on the council, John, trying to find you. And now you are here, you're leaving us very, very prematurely, but I do wish you all the best in the future. And then moving on to Angus Lees. Angus, you will be greatly missed. I think you've chaired the Audit and Standards Committee very diligently. I think you've been very fair with people, and you will be missed. But I know that you are embarking on new adventures with your wife, and may they be long and fruitful, and enjoy your retirement from public service. To everybody else on this list, thank you for your service to this authority. It is a big task that we ask of people, of elected members. It's not easy, and we have our bun fights. But the people who pay the price for this are our families back home who don't see us, grandchildren who don't see grandparents because they've got their head stuck in a yellow book, or wondering whether they can attend a family dinner or not because of what the municipal diary says. So councillors do make great sacrifices right across the board. And from myself and everyone else, thank you all for your service and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Ruth Buttery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's said that life is a journey, and having the honour and privilege of being a councillor for 8 years and lead member of Children's Services for the last 5, it certainly has been that. Sometimes it's been a physical journey, when I climbed Ben Nevis with Councillor Phipps, or when I went on an epic bike ride with Councillor Barnett. We were just talking about routes then, and it was about cycling routes. But more often, it's been a journey of learning and resilience. But who would have thought, Sue, on that car park 5 years ago, that we would have got through the improvement journey and COVID? And what has sustained me along the way is my faith, my family, and my friends. I was wondering how I could encapsulate this, and when I did my readings this morning, I read this. There's no place like home, says Dorothy, clicking the heels of her ruby slippers. In The Wizard of Oz, that was all it took to magically transport Dorothy and Toto from Oz back to their home. Unfortunately, there aren't enough pairs of ruby slippers for everyone. Although many share Dorothy's longings for home, finding that home, a place of belonging, is something easier said than done. And that is what we have tried to do in Children's Services, to make houses homes, to support parents and give children the aspiration and opportunity to fulfil their potential. Madam Mayor, we have councils' buildings of bricks and mortar, but they are nothing without the staff. And as I reflect over the last 8 years, and especially the last 5, it's the community, children and staff I think of. We are blessed with great partnerships such as the family nurse practice. We have the amazing voluntary sector that came into its own during COVID. And I remember going to the Institute of Technology and seeing Nikki and her team wrapping and distributing Christmas presents and food parcels, of holiday clubs online with the craft and food parcels delivered the day before, of our own HAF before the HAF programme started, and that's grown and developed, and now we have child-friendly Dudley. Of Helen Ellis now in Birmingham, who helped us through COVID so amazingly well and now doing an amazing job in Birmingham Send team. We now have 5 amazing family hubs, and Teresa, who always says, cut me in half and you'll see Dudley running through it. And all the staff within those teams who have so much more initiatives and so much more to give. The MASH headed up by Corbyn and Corbyn Road Thriving, the education team supporting children at all ages and opening inclusion hubs for all ages with Sal and Sue and Gemma and Martin. Of course, we have the rebuilding of Penn's Meadow, and my thanks goes to Marie's tenacity, but also especially to Councillor Harley and to Councillor Steve Clark for supporting, well, us, Marie and myself, through this journey. We have Eton and Coseley being built. We have apprenticeships for care leavers. We've introduced family safeguarding, which has been a game-changing programme, and reducing the agency staff and increasing our permanent staff to the point that at a recent jobs fair, we actually had social workers searching out the Dudley stand to find out about how they could come and work here for us. And we now have teams coming to visit us, which is wonderful, as we had other authorities supporting us when we were in need, and now we can pay it forward. But my final thanks must go to Dr. Catherine Driscoll, who, when I first spoke to her, said, there might be a few issues in Dudley, you might need a bit of, determination there. And with her tenacity and strength of character, has seen these really huge changes through. I have to thank Councillor Pat Harley, because we have often discussed who would go under the patio. It's always been a bit of a tie, but for entrusting me with this portfolio and supporting me through some very challenging decisions. but most importantly to my husband Tim, who actually it's his birthday today and I'm here, and to my family, without whose love and support I could not have done this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buttery. Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just start by wishing all the members who aren't standing in the upcoming elections all the very best for the future. It'd obviously be remiss of me not to say a few specific words about some of my colleagues on the Labour group in particular. And I completely agree with what Councillor Harley said about Councillor Barnett. I think your drive and your determination and the way that you think innovatively about how we can make this council and our borough a better place will certainly be missed by this Labour group and I think by the wider council. So it's been fantastic to serve with you in the Shadow Cabinet and in the Labour group. I also want to say some nice words about Councillor Zada actually, but he's not here, so I hope he's watching. But my journey and Councillor Zada's journey onto this council been pretty similar actually. He got on in 2011, myself in 2012. I had the privilege of being on the planning committee for quite a while, serving as vice chair, he was chair, and genuinely look back on those times as some of the fondest times I've had on this council. Actually, it was just brilliant to be on the planning committee. So anyone who hasn't done it, I would recommend it. And obviously my journey and his journey into the Shadow Cabinet and ultimately his journey to become the leader of the Labour group and the leader of this council. And really I just wanted to say a thank you to him for allowing me the opportunity to be in his cabinet when we were in control of the council, in his Shadow Cabinet, and then ultimately for putting me back in the Shadow Cabinet when I was re-elected onto this council in 2022. So I just want to wish him all the very best for the future, and I want to thank him for his guidance, his help and his support. So, as I say, I hope he's watching. Of course, I want to speak about Councillor Margaret Aston. I don't very often say nice things about you, Margaret, but tonight I'll make an exception. But Margaret is genuinely one of those people who is an exemplar when it comes to being a public servant. She's served the people of our borough for nearly 3 decades. Firstly, in Sedgley, I think one of the only time in my lifetime that we've had a Labour councillor in Sedgley. And then obviously for the people of Castle Priory as well. And her list of achievements are far too long to read out tonight, but the way that she's worked hard, her determination to make Castle Priory a better place, to make Dudley a better place, is an example to all of us about what it means to be a public servant and to just want to get things done for our communities. I mean, I think one of the biggest achievements actually that she'd probably admit herself was keeping the peace between the two Finch brothers in Councillor Alan Finch and Councillor Ken Finch for nearly 2 decades. So that is a standout achievement, I think, and worthy of all our praise. So you will be sorely missed, Margaret, by me personally, by the Labour group, by the council, and by the people of Castle Priory and the wider borough. So I just want to say a massive thank you to you for everything you've done for our borough and for me personally and for putting up with all my rubbish jokes at times. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mark Westwood, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you and pay tribute to Mike Evans. He's been a councillor for 24 years in Sedgley, unbeaten record. I think that speaks volumes for the person and the work he's done in Sedgley and, in fact, I have to say, for the Dudley North people as well. He's a stalwart. A couple of things I've learned from Mike. One, when you go out delivering with him as a young fella, by goodness, can he walk. Many a time he's nearly killed me, walking up and down Dale. But credit to you, Mike, you've always been there, you've always turned up, you've always been committed and worked damned hard for the people of Sedgley. And I thank you for that. Tina has asked me to pass on her thanks to you for your support to her, your loyalty that you've shown her over the past couple of years. And also David has asked me to pass on his thanks for the work that you did for him when he was council leader, and it's much, much appreciated. I'd now like to move on to Councillor Ruth Buttery. I've never known a person with so much enthusiasm for a role in all my life. I take my hat off to Ruth. She's just when she comes into a room, the work she puts in, the enthusiasm, it's just infectious. She's popped down the school that I'm chairman of in Lowgornal, and again, she's come down there, she's supported us, not just a one-off to show or raise the flag, she's actually done some groundwork for us. And Ruth, I wish you all the very best, and thank you for everything you've done. And Councillor Margaret Aston, David Cornt does remember you being in Sedgley. And it's one of those things he reminds me of, and he does, again, have fond memories of working with you on the council, and to say that you are, dare I say it, I think he used the words, the old school who worked with him to deliver the right things for the people of Dudley Borough, and not just to fight over silly little matters. You've actually delivered some fantastic achievements for the Dudley Borough, and I wish you all the best, Tina and David as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westwood. Councillor Chris Barnett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just got a few words to say and some words of thanks. And of course, to all those who are standing down this year, and frankly, to all those who will be elected, I thank you all for your service. On behalf of the people of Dudley, obviously, I know what the job's about now, and it's no small thing to undertake. First of all, I've really got to thank my partner Sharon, and all the residents of Quarry Bank and Dudley Wood, because without Sharon and all those people, it would never have happened. And we all know how much we need to thank our partners for putting up with this stuff. In the early days, I had a great deal of support from Councillor Cowell and also Alderman Brian Cottrell, and I'd like to thank them indeed. And early on there, I had this great opportunity where we saved Saltwell's Nature Reserve from a catastrophic planning application, and there were some campaigners involved in that, Leslie Dunn and Kate Riggs in particular, who I remember very fondly and very, very kindly for the really hard work they've done there. And what led on to that was the Friends of Saltwell's Nature Reserve, and all those good people are still in there, and they're still working hard and still doing great things at that nature reserve. There've been some interesting challenges that I didn't see coming along the way. Climbing mountains and epic cycle rides with Councillor Phipps and Councillor Buttery. I never saw that coming in either way, and we had a great time in Scotland and Wales, and thanks for that. I've had so much support over the years from all of my Labour colleagues, all who've stood down, and all who are here now. I'd particularly like to remember Rebecca Gentle while she was here. She was a great support to me. In particular, a couple of people I must mention, Councillor Zada, for allowing me to be in his cabinet for a while he was here, and a great support he was to me too. And in particular, Councillor Cathy Baton, who's been my sounding board for many things, and has listened to my woes and moans with good advice and mostly good humour. Finally, I mustn't forget to thank every officer who works at Dudley Borough Council for all the hard work they put in. These are particularly testing times for everybody and all of us, and I wish all of you the very best in the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Jackie Cowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank those who are standing down on both sides for their service. It's not an easy job to do, and it takes a lot of dedication. There are some colleagues who have had a significant impact on my time as a councillor, and I want to focus my contribution on those individuals. Margaret Aston has always been a friendly and supportive presence. I can remember the early days on the Tree Preservation Orders Committee, when we shared a good laugh over the fate of various trees in the borough, whilst former Councillor Cottrell made sarcastic comments about how they should all be in Himley Hall. From my perspective, Margaret has always been here. She's been part of my journey on this council from the beginning, through good times and bad, and I will miss her. I wish you a long, healthy and happy retirement, Margaret. Kadar Zada came through the ranks with me as we both worked our way up to being an elected member in the early 2000s, finally becoming councillors in 2011. We have shared many of the trials and tribulations of being a Labour Party activist. Of course, Kadar promoted me to the cabinet. Kadar made it to the cabinet much earlier than myself, and it is he who placed me in the cabinet for the first time last year. I will always be grateful for that opportunity. I thank Kadar for his support and wish him well in his future endeavours. Chris Barnett has been a great asset to both myself and to our ward. In many ways, we seem to be quite complementary to each other. Chris has boundless energy and can walk or cycle up and down those endless hills, whilst I get out of breath as I get out of the car. Dogs lie in wait for me and seem to regard me as potential breakfast, but they become perfectly compliant when Chris approaches. Chris has also led on social media campaigning and had some important successes, as he alluded to earlier, in relation to galvanising support for the Saltwells Nature Reserve and for action on the Thorns Road speeding issue, for example. Chris, your time on this council hasn't been the longest, but it has been significant. And I valued your support through some difficult times. I wish you well, whatever comes next. To all those on both sides that are leaving us, thank you and best wishes for the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. Councillor Adam Aston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to say a few words in tribute to all of the retiring members of this council. The great Arnold Schwarzenegger once said, "Help others and give something back. I guarantee you will discover that while public service improves the lives and the world around you, its greatest reward is the enrichment and new meaning it will bring to your life." So to those retiring public servants, whether you've served 4 years or 40, whether you're on this side of the chamber or that one, I hope your time in public service has been enjoyable, rewarding and enriching. And thank you for working to make our borough a better place to live. Because at the end of the day, Madam Mayor, that's why we put ourselves through election after election, meeting after meeting, all the social media stuff we put up with. It's because we love this borough and we want to make it just a little bit better. So in closing, Madam Mayor, I must pay tribute to my mum, who's stepping down after 29 years on this council, serving both Sedgley, those few glorious years in the late 90s when the red flag fluttered above Sedgley Beacon, and then Castle and Priory wards. It's her fault I was delivering leaflets when I was 8 years old. It's her fault I joined the Labour Party at 16, and it's her fault I'm standing here now. But I wouldn't have it any other way. So thanks, Mom. Happy retirement, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Aston. Councillor Peatlow.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It takes Margaret Aston 29 years of attendance at council meetings, and then she finally sees her son pretend to be Arnold Schwarzenegger at a council meeting. I'll come back to Margaret shortly. It's a reminder that we've got 9 people standing down and not seeking re-election, about the work that each and every one of them do. Some of the people standing down I know more than others. Jonathan Elliott, I don't know well. I'm sure if we shared a fair trade coffee or a pint of beer, that we would disagree on more than we would agree with. But I thank you for your service to this authority. Angus Lees, I know if we shared a fair trade coffee or a pint of beer, that we would disagree on more than we would agree with. But I also know how you served your constituents, how you served your community, and the asset you have been, not just to your party, but to this chamber. And I thank you for your service. Mike Evans, up until 2 years ago, I would clearly say that if we shared a pint or a fair trade coffee, we would disagree on far more than we would agree with. But I think that has possibly changed over the last 2 years, where we found ourselves agreeing on the direction of this authority, often more than we've been disagreeing with it. And then to Councillor Ruth Buttery, I think I remember Ruth the first time we appeared on Black Country Radio, which I think was the first time that you'd appeared on that. Hopefully I was kind to you on that. But what we quickly understood is we had a person not just committed to their community, but also somebody who very quickly could pick up the brief, run with the brief, and be diligent within that. And whilst if we shared a cup of coffee or a pint of beer, we may disagree on more than we agree with, I would certainly hope that in the future you would consider standing for re-election, because the skills that you have within this council chamber, I think as a leader of the council, mentioned, will be sorely missed. And I thank all of you for all that you've done. To Councillor Kader Zada, many people have mentioned this evening, many have had the opportunity to serve in the shadow cabinet, possibly soon to be the cabinet in not too long in the future. Of course, he passed on to me the mantle of picking up as leader of this group. I thank him as a friend, I thank him as a community champion, and I thank him for all that he did as part of the Labour Party and serving his community. He will be sorely missed. To Adrian Hughes, who's standing down and not seeking re-election. Anybody who was involved in the campaign that Adrian undertook will know what a diligent campaigner he was and the doors that he knocked on to ensure that he was elected. To Marion Howard, who stood a term ago in Cosley, and I had the dubious honour of giving her 2 of my ABBA Voyage tickets. She gave me a nice bottle of Rioja in return for that, and has served her community diligently and will be sorely missed as she spends further time away from Dudley to spend elsewhere in a retirement. I'll then go on to Chris Barnett. Chris, many people in this chamber won't know, Madam Mayor, but we actually went to school together. He used to be a bit of a rocker, loved to headbang to Black Sabbath and Motorhead. I was still more of a Smiths fan at the time and a bit into Billy Bragg. But we then touched base again in the early 2010s, where not only did he come out and campaign for myself, but we managed to encourage him, for right or wrong, that he should become a councillor. And he is a man of principle, and I thank him absolutely for the service, Chris, and I hope to see you again. You will be sorely missed, and certainly personally, I wish that you were not leaving this council chamber. And then we go to the stalwart, Councillor Margaret Aston. She's heard her son talk in tones of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, let us not be under any misconception that underneath that veneer, underneath that soft, cuddly exterior, we have a firebrand. Somebody who, let us not forget, defeated the BNP alongside Councillors Finch and others. So when we had the scourge of the far right, she had the tenacity to defeat them. You're a friend and you will be sorely, sorely missed. Margaret, I love you to bits.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Judy Foster.
But I want to pay particular tribute to those that I've worked most closely with. And unfortunately, 2 of them aren't here tonight. Councillor Marion Howard and Councillor Zada unfortunately can't be with us. So I'll talk about them both first of all and hope that they're watching. So Marion, I've really enjoyed working with Marion. There are many things that we do as councillors that aren't just about our committees, but we do things for our own political parties as well.
And Marion has been an absolute asset to the party in chairing our Dudley Women's Forum, and I thank her for the work that she did on that, helping to get more women to stand for council. Secondly, Councillor Zada. Councillor Zada, I was his agent in, I think it was about 2008, when Labour had a particularly bad year. And he stood in Brockmore and Pensnet, actually, and we had about 2 or 3 far-right party stands. And unfortunately, he failed to win. He lost by less than 70 votes. And then he came back onto the council in 2011 and then latterly became leader of the council. And I think that is a remarkable achievement for somebody from Cadar's background as a first. And certainly in that role, he acquitted himself really well. He gave lots of talent within our party the opportunity to serve in cabinet and to have roles. And I think that he will be sorely missed. And those councillors that are here, well, first of all, Chris Barnett. Chris, nobody's mentioned your contribution yet to the environment. And I think that your coming onto the council has really woken the council up to the issues relating to climate change. And I think part of your lasting legacy will be now the work that is now ongoing in the council to address some of those issues. So I thank you for that, for your enthusiasm and hard work on that agenda. And what I would say is keep cycling and keep running, because they're both very environmentally friendly, as you know. And finally, Margaret. Margaret, you have been an absolute star. I think you were on the council when I first came on, and then you went off, and then you came back on again, and it was a delight to have you back on. I was out in your ward on Saturday. Everybody knows you. It's quite obvious that you will be sorely missed as a councillor. But, Madam Mayor, I also remember, Margaret, your term as mayor. And you carried out that role with distinction and integrity of the type that is rare. You were experienced, you were gracious, you were full of wisdom, and certainly meetings under your stewardship, obviously there's the usual rough and tumble of political life, but you were a steady pair of hands during those times, and I thank you for your service then. Thank you for all of your service, all the years that you've done as a councillor, serving the people that you've served, and may I wish you and your family a long and happy retirement.
Councillor Ian Kettle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I rise to thank the retiring councillors tonight who've put themselves forward and volunteered and put their head above the parapet. So many people don't do. And over the years, you get relationships within this chamber from both sides of the chamber. And you recognise the resilience, the dedication, and the integrity of so many people of decent calibre. So tonight, it's with great sadness I witness the end of the dedicated service that so many people have given to this authority. And being on a metropolitan borough council isn't an easy job. There's only about 19 in the country and a couple of cities, and they're as big as they get. But so many people come through it and grow while they're here and benefit from their dedication and their thinking contribution. So with so many of our friends who are standing down, Mike Evans, Margaret Aston, Angus Lee is my colleague from Pedmore and Stourbridge East, and Zada. In all fairness, I always admired the man and always found he was a decent man with a considerable integrity. And we miss a man like Zada. And I wish him all the best in his new venture. And I made a point of doing so when he came back on the last occasion. But Madam Mayor, when we lose friends, colleagues, associates who have given a quarter of a century or more of service and sacrifice to this borough. It's a considerable sadness when you see them standing down. I thank them all for their service and wish them all the best in the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to wish all the retiring councillors all the very best for their future. And also the comments made by basically Mark, Tina and David. Most grateful, thank you. I became a councillor because I wanted to make a difference. At that stage, I could foresee changes that would improve the quality of Sedgley for its residents. With the support of the Sedgley councillors, Councillor David Cornt, Charles Fraser McNamara and Tina Westwood, we achieved all of those changes to the extent that other ward councils implemented some of those changes in their own wards. Turning to my work within the authority, I became a councillor. I was made Shadow Cabinet Member for Social Services, working with the late Rachel Harris and Steve Warthoe, I believe 2 outstanding councillors. We drastically improved the quality of the overall service. On taking control of the council, I was made Cabinet Member for Housing Services. Within 2 years, I was able to guide the service from a 2-star rating service with little change of improvement to a 4-star rating service, 2 years before Dudley achieved the overall 4-star rating for the authority. With the support of ex-councillors Ken and Alan Finch and Councillor Margaret Aston, we achieved the North Priory project, which was the demolition of 170 houses and the building of 210 dwellings, a practice I felt should have been continued on other parts of the North Priory estate and also part of St Thomas's. Because the archives project had become stagnant, I was asked to take over this project. Plans were drawn up and approved. I changed the proposed location from Orley to Castlegate in Dudley town centre, a far better location. The building of the new archives then proceeded. I was then made Cabinet Member for Children's Services and Finance. I also spent a number of years on Centro Board, fully supporting the Metro, but also achieved light rail being put back on the agenda, with a promise that this could be upgraded to a full passenger transport service if required at a later date. In 2010 and 11, I was made Deputy Mayor of Dudley. In 2011-12, I was made Mayor. I think the greatest privilege anyone in this chamber can have, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. I believe that one of the hardest challenges I had to face was the future of Dudley Zoo and Castle. In the early days, Dudley was losing substantial sums of money. Most of the councillors and officers of Dudley wanted to disregard the zoo. After talking to the editor of the Express and Star, a questionnaire run by the Express and Star indicated that 89% of the residents of Dudley wanted to maintain the zoo in its present format with improvements. A short time later, Dudley appointed St Modwin's as the developer of Dudley Zoo and Castle. St Modwin's policies was to remove all of the large animals and turn the zoo into a commercial outlet. This could not be supported by the zoo board or the charity. 2 years later, St Modwin's walked away. Working with ex-councillor David Sparks, a new board of professional people was set up. The new board set out 5 and 10-year development management plans and also restructured the overall management of the operations. From then on, the zoo has gone from strength to strength and now is a successful organisation and that the people of Dudley can be purely proud of. Over many years, I have made many friends on both sides of the chamber, as I have always believed that we can achieve a lot more working together than separately. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor David Stanley.
The Mayors, Councillor Evans, and also to Councillor Aston. That's one thing we have in common. We both serve the borough as mayors. I'd like, first of all, to thank all those that are not seeking re-election this time. It's a great pity, really, that we lose from time to time such a vast amount of experience in various ways. There's no question about the services being given by the people that are retiring on this occasion. Councillor Barney, for example, we had little discussions about all sorts of things, but we never finally put the world to right, but at least we're good friends when we spoke to one another. Councillor Zarda, I must admit, he was always very, very kind and considerate to me every time he spoke, or he had an opportunity when he sat where you are, Councillor Lowe, he'd always find a kind word to say about me, so I'll always appreciate him for that. Not as you don't do the same, Councillor Lowe. Yeah, thank you very much on that respect. Councillor Buttery, what can you say about Councillor Buttery? Well, then what a splendid job she's done for us over a period of time. As the leader's already indicated, the amount of time she puts in, the energy she puts into it, and what she's achieved in the process. They're absolutely splendid. And you have something to be very, very thankful for there, Councillor Buttery. Yes, a credit to you in every sense of the word. Councillor Lees, we've not had a lot to do with one another over the years. We've passed by one another like ships in the night, but we always very speak and have a little chat about things that's necessary at any particular time. It's very sad to see you going as well. Councillor Elliott, we go back a long time, don't we, really, to be perfectly truthful, over the years, and in the deep south of the borough, where you spend most of your time these days. Councillor Hughes, and also Councillor Howard. But really good times together, didn't we, Councillor Ridney, on the old area committees and the community committees, or whatever we call ourselves these days. At least we worked together, we got on very, very well, and they were good days. So I wish them all the very best. I think that, Madam Mayor, sort of covers everyone. But what I would like to do now, if I may, is to thank each and every one of you for what you have contributed to this great borough of ours. What effort you've put in, what you've done, what you've achieved, is just good for the benefit of the borough and the folk of the borough of Dudley. And I do thank you very, very much indeed for that. Councillor Evans, there's always one word I always think about with you, to be perfectly truthful, and it must be going through a lot of people's minds in here. Significant in every respect. Councillor Evans, basically you're very good what you did. Thank you very much. And I didn't mean that in any offensive way at all. It was meant in the nicest, kindest way. And a lot of people appreciate that. You know what I mean? You certainly brought that word into a lot of being, whereas in the past it was infrequently used, but you made a frequently used one. And that, as I say, is a credit to yourself. Madam Mayor, I don't think I've missed anyone out, but if I have, I apologise. But honestly, I miss all of you, and it's been a pleasure serving with you. It really has, to be perfectly truthful. And that's one of the things about the unity of this council, in this room and in the committee rooms, where we can work together for one thing, and that's for the betterment of the people out there that put us here. And I'm going to conclude with that, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Councillor Jonathan Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I was first elected to this council 2 years ago, one of the pieces advice I was given by the group whip was then don't be in a rush. Don't be in a rush to speak at full council too soon. And so I think when you reach your last full council, I think it's probably a good idea to do your maiden speech. I wish this term had been longer. I had initially hoped to fight for Hales Zone South again. The reality is that life circumstances have prevailed, and I'll be getting married in November and moving to Walsall. And on that note, I'd like to Thank my fiancée Emma for her support in the last 2 years. And if she's watching tonight, she's given up a Monday night to watch council. I might have succeeded in converting her into being a West Brom fan. I haven't yet converted her into being a Conservative. That could be, and given that her mother is a Liberal Democrat member, that could be a lengthy process. I'd like to thank the officers of the council for the hard work they do. I know council officers often get a bad press at times, but I want to thank them for their work. I want to thank my ward colleagues in Hillsdale South, Councillor Russon and Councillor Taylor. I hope they'll be back here next month alongside Jeff Hill. I'd like to thank all my colleagues in the Conservative group, many of whom I've known a long time. And of course, my biggest thank you is to the people of Hillsdale South for giving me the privilege of serving them. Finally, can I take this opportunity to thank members across the chamber? Well, I don't know everyone, but I know there's some good people in here on both sides, and so I wish them well, and I wish everyone across Hillsdale and across the borough well too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Sean Kesey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of brief words. I want to send my best wishes to all retiring members and also say some thank yous. Margaret Aston, Chris Barnett, Ruth Buttery, Jonathan Elliott, Marion Howard, Adrian Hughes, Angus Lees and Kada Zarda. The best of wishes to all of you. Councillor Evans, Mike. We've not often seen eye to eye over the last 6 years, but we've always been respectful and always worked for what we believed was the good of Sedgley. But I wouldn't have been here or had this amazing opportunity without the faith you put in me back in 2016. Thank you, and I wish you all well for the future. Madam Mayor, if you'll indulge me, I just want to say something I couldn't say last year. It's regarding former councillor Tina Westwood, Anne Millward and indeed Karen Shakespeare. I am so sorry for what happened to you last year. I believe we were all pawns in the plans of the current Conservative group leadership. Tina, you are so knowledgeable about, well, everything political. And said...
Councillor Kesey, this really is irrelevant to this evening's meeting. I do apologise, but it's not for tonight.
Could I just say the last 2 sentences, please?
I've just said no, sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, Tina and Anne, thank you anyway. And my final words are then, I wish everyone who's retiring a peaceful and happy retirement, and maybe, just maybe, I'll see you here on May the 3rd. Thank you all, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Kesey. Councillor Hilary Bills.
I wish best wishes to all of you who are leaving the council. Thank you. I don't think I had an argument with any of you that are leaving. I am desperate that I'm losing Jonathan Elliott because his grandma lives in my road, you know. There's one person who I think has got off rather easy tonight, and he's not here, and I'm furious with him because he's not here. Councillor Zadder, we have to say something. Everyone's been very nice about him. Let's be brutal. You either loved him or you hated him. But the one thing you couldn't be was indifferent to him. And I know he's listening to this. He's not very well. And I said, well, you better listen. So I've waited for my moment. So, Councillor Zadder, you have had lots of lovely things said about you, but I know you. We know him. And if he was your friend, he was the greatest friend you could ever have. If he was your enemy, my goodness me, watch out. And I hope with that passion, when he's finished the current job he's got and he comes back to the borough, that he rejoins us. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bills. No more speakers, so we'll move on to the... The special one. I'm so sorry. Councillor Margaret Aston.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As this is my last full council meeting after 29 years as Dudley councillor, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has supported me during this time, particularly fellow councillors, council officers and the people I have been proud to represent. I was first elected in Sedgley in 1995 and moved to Castle and Priory Ward in the year of 2000. It has been an honour to serve the people of both these wards on this council. I hope I'll be able to make a difference to people's lives. I'll never forget my year as mayor in 2014 and the wonderful support of the people of Dudley. I wish to best wishes for the future and the best of the luck if you're standing for the re-election. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aston. I think that really deserves a big round of applause. So moving on to the reports and recommendations, the 2023-24 Revenue and Capital Programme. Monitoring, I call on the leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that recommendations of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Formally seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Shaukat Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. We all know about the Council's perilous financial position before the latest bad news in this report. While we on this side grasp the long-term implications of this, it seems they on the opposite side believe there is a magic money tree so they can continue to make decisions that will have long-term consequences on the future of services and the financial stability of the Council. Madam Mayor, Councillor Harley believes that this Council is nowhere near Section 114 bankruptcy notice and that neighbouring authorities will soon be. It's about time that he and his Conservative administration tell the truth to Dudley residents. Madam Mayor, this report speaks volumes. It paints a picture of a council inching dangerously closer to the cliff edge. The latest revenue forecast shows that there is significant adverse variance with severe implications for the medium-term financial strategy. The risks I have been highlighting at every opportunity over the last year, and more recently at the budget meeting in March, are now becoming a reality. Risks they have time and again ignored and brushed under the carpet. Risks that they used to set a barely legal budget. Madam Mayor, every day that passes, every decision they take, this council edges closer and closer to bankruptcy. Not only this, this report reveals a trend of deferring decisions to 27-28, effectively kicking the can down the road. In the face of the latest financial forecast, can Councillor Steve Clark confirm how much closer is the Council to bankruptcy, Madam Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. No other speakers, so it is for Councillor Harley to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, Councillor Shaukat Ali must be living in the twilight zone. I know that the Labour front bench don't talk to one another, and that's clearly backed up by the fact that Councillors Lowe and Councillor Foster attend the Independent Improvement Board, set up after the LGA peer review last summer. Even the Independent Improvement Board are now saying that you have made significant strides to improve the Council's finances, and they believe we have a sustainable programme. Contrast that with the socialists in Nottingham and Birmingham who ignored the warning signs and did nothing. We haven't done nothing. We've carefully planned and we're making the changes necessary to improve our finances. In October, Madam Mayor, 2027, we're showing a £27 million black hole in our finances. We set a budget in March that got that down to 12 million by 2027. In March, we set the budget. Just a month later, Madam Mayor, we are £4 million better off because of the measures we've taken. There are 20-odd projects, Madam Mayor, to complete the new total operating model. 4 or 5 of those are near completion. Those are showing savings of £2.6 million. We still have the big meaty projects to come forward that will really put the icing on the cake on our financial sustainability. And then we look at one of the measures we've introduced, green waste. The target was 38,000. It's now in excess of 58,000. On this side of the chamber, we're making the correct decisions to improve our finances and avoid that 114. And yes, Councillor Ali, I do want to go on record as stating that Dudley is nowhere near a 114. We've averted that issue, unlike your colleagues, Labour colleagues in Birmingham. And look at the contrast of what's on offer. We've created a balanced budget, yes, using reserves, but I'm confident this time next year we'll set that budget without dipping into reserves. Contrast that with the party opposite. What would we have had from Councillor Lowe had he been council leader and Councillor Ali in charge of finances? We'd have had the end of free car parking. We'd have had green waste charges introduced, but it would have been a damn lot more, Madam Mayor, than £36 per year. And we'd have also had a 20% council tax increase over the next 2 years, just like the socialist friends down the road in Birmingham. That's the difference between this side of the chamber and that side. This is our budget and we manage it, unlike the Labour Party, who always look round to blame someone else.
Specific points. Firstly, the Leader of the Council referred to confidential issues pertaining to as part of the independent board. So I'm looking at the Chief Executive just to confirm that those items are confidential, not for sharing either within this council chamber or indeed with the Cabinet or the Shadow Cabinet, unless agreed. I would, please allow me to finish, Patrick. I just allow, no. Will you please just allow me to finish? You're obviously getting quite excited. 2 weeks to go. You can see what it's like, can't you? My God. It's about a breach of council procedures because, and as a point of information, the fact that confidential information has been shared and is actually untrue. It is simply not true. Could you please confirm that it's not true? And could you please take that as a point of information, Madam Mayor? Oh, it's a lot.
I will let you respond to this one as he is stating that you are lying. Are you lying?
And it is well known that we wrote to DLUC, the Department for Levelling Up, to ask for additional help. In my opinion, and in the opinion of Cabinet colleagues, our financial position improved to the extent that I asked the Deputy Chief Exec to write to DLUC to withdraw that request for help. That is something Councillor Lowe didn't and doesn't agree with. The only additional help DLUC can offer is the permission to increase council tax over and above.
Councillor Harley, all I asked was were you lying? That was it.
Madam Mayor, what I'm stating is the truth.
Thank you.
Shared with all 72 councillors so they can make...
Councillor Lowe, the point of information is not within the Code of Conduct. Thank you. Could you find it for me then, please, Councillor Foster?
Chief Executive on this matter.
If Madam Mayor, I can just clarify. Many constitutions, every constitution has a point of order. A point of order is when the process has not been complied with, and in which case our constitution requires that the member raising the point of order identifies the procedure that has not been complied with in order that you can make a determination upon that. We do not, in our constitution, have a point of information. Many constitutions do have points of information or points of clarification, but our constitution doesn't have that particular provision within it. Again, the constitution is something which is subject to annual review, but now what has been said has been said.
Thank you for clarification. Are all agreed? That is carried. Council Plan 2022 to 25, I call on the Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not as contentious, this one, I hope. Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the recommendation of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Formally seconded, Madam Mayor.
As there are no speakers, I call on the Leaders to reply, but the Leader's not going to want to. So all agreed? That is carried. Dudley Council Climate Action Plan. I call on Councillor Dr Rob Clinton.
Madam Mayor, I call on members of the Council. I move that the recommendations of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
Yes, Madam Mayor, formally seconded.
Councillor Catherine Baton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as we said at Cabinet, I do welcome this long-awaited climate action plan. It is so critical that the Council can now be held to account on progress against a set of matrix. But I just want to, at this point, we wouldn't be here with a climate change action plan. We wouldn't be here with Cabinet and Shadow Cabinet and a Climate Change Select Committee had it not been for our retiring councillor, Councillor Barnett, who brought the council to declare a climate emergency in 2020 and for kick-starting that work. So an absolute massive thank you to him for getting us to this place. But what I would like to say is whoever is in control in May, it is really important that regardless of the financial position this council is in, that the focus on delivery for climate change isn't lost. We cannot afford to lose that in this council, and we have to maintain that focus, whichever side of the council is in charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baton. Councillor Barnett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, you know, I welcome this climate action plan. It's been a long time coming, but I'm genuinely glad that it's here. And I hope it works to make a difference in Dudley and to Dudley residents. As Cathy has mentioned, I was certainly instrumental in the beginning of Dudley accepting climate change as an emergency. And I'll never forget introducing that motion to Council. I also remember Councillor Phipps's amendment, and how can I forget just how passionate residents were about the whole situation. It's the only full council I've attended in 6 years that the mayor had to abandon because of the residents' reaction. That was unfortunate, but I think it demonstrated the passion there is about it. So in the 4 years since we've adopted climate change as an emergency, we've all seen changes happening around us, and it's becoming very clear that urgent action is required to avoid catastrophic change to our environment. So as a retiring councillor, I can only urge every member of the council to do everything they can, please, to move forward at the fastest pace possible. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. And Councillor Dr Rob Clinton to reply.
Yes, I'd like to thank both Councillor Barnett and Councillor Phipps for their early contribution. However, I'd like to make you all aware that it's a Conservative party that's actually brought the Climate Action Plan into fruition. Right, we've built a team up. We've got a team of 7 people. I'm hoping to create more room for more members if we can get some funding for it. It's all about accountability. What we've done, or what I've tried to do, is to make it apolitical, right? The climate, it doesn't matter whether you're talking from Liberal Democrats, Independent, Labour or Conservative, the climate is the climate. It's going to affect everybody, right? Therefore, a lot of the rules and regulations linking into it come from the United Nations Sustainable Development Plan, right? So a lot of those 17 goals there will be driving the main features of the climate plan. The other things that we have to remember is it's the 2-tier action plan. It's point 1 and point 2. People might think, well, why isn't it just from now to 2030? If we use it from now to 27, basically that gives us the opportunity to reflect what's going on in society, reflect what's going on in governments, and reflect what's going on with the actual climate. So it's a living, breathing action plan that can have annual updates, right? We also have a mechanism now within Dudley Council. We have the Climate Change Committee, chaired by Councillor Pete Dodd here, who's doing an excellent job of that, where we have Conservative members, we have Labour members, we have members of the public,
climate activists involved in that. So it's really an all-party, in a way, action plan that's been developed and evolved. And the reason why we're doing that is because we want it to belong to everyone, not just one specific side. This plan should be belonging to actually everybody, both sides of the seats here. The other thing is here, which I personally like, is that we've also got the directors' climate action group as well. Now, the benefit of having the climate action group from the directors is they're accountable for their departments. So they'll be fully accountable. What we're going to be doing moving forward, should I still be here, I hope so, I think I will be, is make sure there's a format looking at aims for each department, aims of the department linking to their action plan, their objectives and their outcomes. And these aims, objectives and outcomes will then be reported to the climate action plan, the climate action group, and then back to the cabinet member and to the manager also of the climate, sustainability and energy group. Okay, so hopefully we've got something that's working. We should, I don't know whether, well, I've done the climate literacy test, so I've passed that test. I had notification a couple of days ago, and apparently I can now get like a little banner on the bottom of my emails to say that I've done it. But apparently that will also give us a bronze starting point, right? So one of the big things that I would encourage every member, both sides, is to take up the opportunity to engage with climate literacy training, right? The more people we can get engaged with climate literacy training, the more aware that we're going to be about climate within our committee roles that we're doing, right? And also that will help build Dudley's profile as a climate change proactive local council. Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All agreed. That is carried. Overviewing Scrutiny, Annual Report 2023-24. I call on Councillor Ian Kettle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the council, I move the report be received and noted. Oh, second.
Is there a seconder?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Catherine Bayton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make reference to page 117 and the Climate Change Select Committee, and just place on record my thanks to the co-opted members onto that committee, for Mr Weller and particularly Mark Richardson, Friends of the Earth. Their detailed knowledge and experience and expertise has given that committee a completely different dimension. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bayton. Councillor Ian Kettle to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to find it in my papers. What she's just mentioned. Let me report back to you from my Councillor Bayton. I do apologise. Thank you.
All agreed? That is carried. A notice of motion. Can I remind members that under Council Procedure Rule 12.5, the maximum time allowed to deal with notices of motion is 30 minutes. If the notice of motion is not dealt with within this period, it will be referred to the next ordinary meeting of the Council. Tackling antisocial use of off-road vehicles. At the Council meeting on the 26th of February 2024, Councillor Ryan Priest moved the motion as set out on the agenda. The motion was seconded, and Councillor Laura Taylor-Charles has moved an amendment which was also seconded. The amendment is set out on the agenda. During the debate on the amendment, Councillor Simon Phipps moved a closure motion to the effect that the amendment be put to the vote. This was seconded. I am of the opinion that the amendment has been sufficiently discussed. I will therefore put the closure motion to the vote. For clarity, members are being asked to vote on whether the amendment should be put to the vote. If the closure motion is lost, the debate should return to the amendment.
If members can now please vote on the closure motion, in other words, that the question be put.
Well,
If members can now please complete their voting process. Madam Mayor, it is quite clear, 59%, 39 members in favour of the question now being put and 27 against. So the amendment, Madam Mayor, can now be put to the vote.
So before I put the amendment to the vote, I call on Councillor Ryan Priest to exercise his right of reply to the amendment. No. Yeah.
Am I on? Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Begrudgingly, I admit that actually I think this amendment improves my original motion. And actually I think it's something that members across all parties can be supporting based on the comments of members at the last meeting. Councillor Crompton, I actually think it was fair that your suggestion that a strip rail fence across the entirety of the park may have been a little bit excessive. Councillor Taylor-Child's amendment fixes that issue by reducing it to a consideration, meaning that physical barriers can be put in parts of the perimeter where it would be useful, but only once the council's finances have improved. I think that's absolutely the right thing to be doing. And while there were some things in your own amendment that I disagreed with, one thing that I think would make a positive impact was your proposal for an exercise to target underage sales at petrol stations, and I hope, regardless of how the vote goes tonight, that that's something that can be actioned by this council. Councillor Aston pointed out that cuts to police funding has decreased local intelligence at the last meeting, and again, I agree, but my experience in Cradley and Woolscote is that elected members have become that source of local intelligence, and when it's passed on, it still isn't actioned. So the motion, amended or otherwise, will streamline reporting within this authority, and it will allow for greater accountability of the police to this authority. Councillor Denning told us about the success the police have had in operations in his ward, 7 bikes captured, and I'm pleased, I really am. But I don't represent Castle and Priory, and in Woolscote, residents feel like they're being paid lip service by this council and by the police force. So I think it's right that this authority considers expressing our dissatisfaction for the Police and Crime Commissioner's failure to tackle the antisocial use of off-road bikes. A few pockets of success does not make up for failure on the whole. We have to stamp out this scourge on our streets and in our parks, and this motion is how we did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. I now call for any speakers on the substantive motion. Councillor Natalie Neal. Apologies. We'll vote now on the amendment.
So just for clarity, this is a vote on Councillor Taylor-Child's amendment. Madam Mayor, we've got 40 in favour of the amendment, 24 against and 2 abstentions, so the amendment is carried. And that now becomes the substantive motion upon which any further speakers may wish to speak.
Okay. So I now call for any speakers on the substantive motion. Councillor Natalie Neal.
if I could just indicate for clarity, there are a number of names I have before me: Councillor Nathan Neal, Councillor Mohammed Hanif, and Councillor Tim Crumpton. It may be that you wish to speak, councillors, on the Councillor Neal not. Councillor Crumpton. He has, yeah. Okay,
Sorry.
I'm advised. So I'm advised, Councillor, that you spoke in moving the. On the substantial motion as amended, you may do, yes.
It's really quite sad, actually, because there are parts of this motion that make some sense. But I've got to say, I'm speaking against it tonight, and I'm speaking against it for a few reasons. The first is that we're talking about off-road bikes here. But as with life everywhere, things move on. The off-road bikes, which have terrorised so many across our borough, and particularly in the ward of Cradley North and Woollerscote now. It seems to change its mind about its name every 20 years, apparently. But things have moved on. These off-road bikes, which are talked about here as in parks and nature reserves, are terrifying the people on the streets and the pavements of Cradley North and Woollerscote. And the real difficulty that I have with this motion, as now amended, is it doesn't really say what we're going to do in any specific terms. Now, I was phoned about 4 weeks ago by a resident saying that a relative of theirs wouldn't mind going to see them because they were terrified. And when I went to see that person, I found out why they were terrified. They were terrified because the kids on the bikes in Cradley North and Woollerscote don't stay on the bikes. They walk around the streets. They make life a misery, absolute misery. They don't just shout names at you. They get iron bars and they smash them against your walls. They smash them against your fences. The police look on. In fact, in one circumstance, 2 police cars were outside whilst these things were happening, and they took no notice whatsoever. The other problem with this motion is, why have we suddenly got to throw inane political gestures? Police and Crime Commissioner, as I think was said at some time in his speech, does not do operational policing. He gets the funding from central government and elsewhere. He allows people to come along and help him with distributing that funding. But he can't distribute money he hasn't got. He doesn't tell Chief Superintendent Tagg, who's the Dudley commander now, what to do with that. Now, I was lucky. After I'd gone round and seen some people, I'd actually got an appointment with Anthony Tagg. And I sat down with him for well over an hour. It was supposed to be only for about half an hour, but it turned out to be well over an hour, and told him that police weren't communicating with people in our ward. They weren't coming back to them when they dialed 101 or even 999. The police knew the names of all of the offenders in our ward, and that these offenders were no longer on little bikes rushing across the park, and actually nowhere near the park for most of the time, but they were walking around, one of them with a machete underneath his long black coat. 4 of them regularly burglaring houses because there'd been 12 within 200 yards of Wassell Road over the past 8 weeks, taking keys from those people, stealing their cars and vans with their livelihoods inside them. They got hundreds and hundreds of CCTV images because the majority of people in that area are now so scared that they've all got CCTV. You wouldn't believe it. They're sitting in front of it as if it was a sort of 24-hour Coronation Street going on in front of them, but they can't go out. There is one family in one road, and I will not name them here, but the police know about them, and our council knows about them as well, who are terrorising the whole of that neighbourhood. And they've been doing it for 15 years, and we should have evicted them 15 years ago because they're breaking their tenancy agreement. Right? We have a number of other things going on there and there. So this does nothing to stop the scourge of these things. The real problem we face is this. Only a few years ago, we had 4 PCSOs in my ward who knew these kids and took them away from all this stuff. We don't have them any longer because this Conservative government, and it is this Conservative government, not the police commissioner, who's doing things. Final note, we have had the off-road bike team around in the last 3 days. We have had an increase in police. Strangely, the news reporter said he'd never had the police ring him up so many times about anything. I hope that we've actually got this out in the open now. I hope that the 8 or 9 ASBOs which have been put in place are now actioned, but I also hope that we work together with them far more effectively than this motion allows us to. So please do not vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crumpton. Councillor Ryan Priest to reply. So the motion goes to the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The votes are now in. We have 39 in favour of the motion. That's the amendment. 39 in favour and 27 against. So the motion is carried.
So questions from members under Council Procedure Rule 11. As previously agreed, the trial of the revised format for the question time sessions will be continued at this meeting. This will involve a 30-minute time limit on the session. The first 3 questions to be offered to the main opposition group leader. Other members will then be invited to ask questions, taking account of any advanced written questions and the list of members who indicate to speak. If the 30 minutes time limit is reached, any further questions can be submitted in writing. The usual process of 2 minutes per question and any supplementary question will apply. I now call on the leader to move the formal suspension of Council Procedure Rules.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that under Council Procedure Rule 22.1, the provisions of Council Procedure Rule 11 be suspended for this meeting to enable the revised question time session to take place as outlined by Madam Mayor.
Is that seconded?
It is, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Does the Council agree?
Aye.
That is carried. Can I remind the Council that the purpose of this session is for members to ask questions. When I call on members to ask a supplementary question, this must relate to the original question or the answer given. Councillor Peatlow.
Madam Mayor, in line with established practice, the 3 designated questions for this evening. First will be Councillor Parmjit Sahota, second will be Councillor Scrutiny, and I will have the 3rd question, Madam Mayor.
I call on Councillor Sahota.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question really relates to the proposed sale of the council-owned site of the former leisure centre on Wellington Road. The council leader has been seen in the press release to be really pleased in securing the sale and a partner. To ensure all that glitters is not gold, as Shakespeare wrote in The Merchant of Venice, I've tried to seek clarity on many key concerns from the officers on the sale of this key council-owned strategic site to ensure full diligence is being taking place. I'm disappointed that the long list of concerns highlighted to the officers have not been fully explained to me in an initial reply to provide reassurance that this is a good deal for Dudley and his people. Importantly, that the land will also include much needed social housing provision for Dudley residents, as in our aims of the Dudley local plan. The concerns include, has the developer a track record of delivering quality developments, financial status, and also running a string of non-development businesses. We also note that new business acquiring the site has only just been set up in February 2024 to develop the site. Possible red flag looking at this security risk. We urge that detailed due diligence is undertaken, and as a site owner, we should be using our leverage to ensure social housing has a good presence on this site. and in line with our aspirations to deliver affordable homes for our communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sahota. Councillor Taylor-Charles to reply, or is it going to be Councillor Harley to reply?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, you can't win with the opposition, can you? They ask us to sort out our financial issues. We do that by selling assets very quickly, or provisionally selling assets very quickly. They moan there's not enough houses being built. We have a plan here where the potential buyer or developer wants to build more houses, and yet they still complain. He also says, I have to be careful what I say because it's still a commercially sensitive process that hasn't yet been concluded, but setting up new companies to deal with one specific site, that's commonplace in the house building industry. As the spokesperson for the Labour group, I would have thought you would have known that. That's commonplace. So there's nothing untoward there, that is commonplace. Now, this was a process where we invited conditional and unconditional offers. Now, we went with an unconditional offer simply because it means that the council gets its hands on that funding a lot earlier than it would do on a conditional offer. Whether this deal goes through eventually remains to be seen because we have to have proof of funding. If that proof of funding is there, it will go through. But I believe that if we can capitalise on surplus sites like this as quickly as possible, that's got to be for the benefit of this borough and this borough's finances. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Sahota, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Lynn. Obviously, I think you haven't answered the question. If this is such a wonderful sale leader, why is there reluctance by the officers to give the list of the concerns I've raised full assurance? And the other thing you haven't answered clearly is, as we own the site, we should be using our leverage to ensure there's affordable housing on that site. So these are the key questions I think we have a right to ask on behalf of our communities, and those questions are not being asked. So I think what I've said is very valid for our communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sahota. Councillor Harley.
Conditional offer. It is not then for the authority or any other body to then make demands on someone who is purchasing a site on an unconditional offer. If you have it as a conditional offer, then you can put those requests in on what you would like developed there. But remember, however long or protracted this issue goes on, there will eventually have to be a planning application. And it's at that phase where the council will try to have influence onto what goes on that site. At the moment, I think you're jumping in far too early. And Madam Mayor, I really do. And I think really we should leave it there because every box is being ticked by the council officers. They're making sure that due diligence is happening. And if this goes through, it's another £1.65 million for the council's coffers, which helps get that financial sustainability. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Sue Ridney, please.
Sitting down. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I couldn't let you go, Ruth, without asking you a question. Sorry. It wouldn't be fair, really, would it? There's a national shortage of places in council-run secure homes, meaning that many children, often struggling with mental health trauma in their lives, are locked away in unregistered children's homes, which are not inspected by Ofsted. So while these homes are illegal, where there is no alternative for a child, use of them is tolerated. And while Ofsted has repeatedly warned of the risks of placing children in unregistered homes, where there is no external oversight, more and more vulnerable children are being placed in them illegally. Can the Cabinet member assure the Council that no vulnerable Dudley child who requires a secure placement is placed in either within or outside the borough in an unregistered home?
Councillor Ruth Buttery to respond.
Thank you, Sue. As you say, this is a national issue. They are actually registered by CQC, although not always by Ofsted. So first of all, let's make it clear that we're not shoving these children away in a broom cupboard somewhere. They're also joint places with health. So they're dual funded between the council and the local health authority, so they have to be secure in those places. So they are, if any of our children are placed in those areas, then our social worker teams do go and visit them, however far away they are. I know of a case recently where a child was about 100 miles away from this borough because that was the best place for the child, and they were visited on a weekly basis from our social workers to make sure that that child, and to look at reunification. As you say, if a child is further away from home, the chance of reunification is harder. There is also ongoing work within the West Midlands to build a secure home. The site is yet to be, I think the site is, it's still commercially sensitive, so the site can't be released yet, but there is ongoing work, as you know, with the Department for Education to build a secure home within the West Midlands. And because of the work we've done with our family safeguarding programme, we've actually reduced the number of children in care in this borough, which is quite frankly nothing short of miraculous, given the fact that since COVID, the number of children, the pressures on children's services have increased at an exponential rate. And the fact that we've been able to keep children within their homes or intervene earlier so that families don't go into crisis. So I can't actually give you the guarantee that you want. As you know, every child that is placed in what's classed as an unregistered, that just means Ofsted unregistered, not CQC unregistered. We have to notify the DFE of the child in that placement, and they're in regular communication with the DCS and the rest of the team to make sure that that child is safe. So,
Thank you, Councillor Buttery.
Sorry, but to answer your question, sorry.
Councillor Ridney, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. Where there's evidence that of an unregistered home existing in the borough, what actions are taken?
External provider wants to put a registered home. No, so that has actually, you're right, there's been a gap in the system. So for those in the council who are not aware, an external independent provider can set up a children's home in any area they want to without regard to the local council, which frankly I think is wrong. So we now, but they do have to go through a planning application. So we have now set up with our planning partners that if any planning application comes in that says they want to build a children's home, that they contact us, because actually if they're a good provider we might well want to work with them, and if they're a poor provider we don't. And we want to know where these children are, because sometimes other authorities will move their children into another area, not necessarily, and they, like I say, they don't statutorily. It's good practice, it's politeness, shall we say, to tell us, but they don't have to tell us. So that's the long and short of it. They don't have to tell us, but we do find out because we work with our planning team, our planning colleagues, to know where they are. Is that helpful?
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As we approach the local elections in just over 2 weeks' time, it's always a time for reflection. So after 14 years of Conservative government rule and 6 years of Tory councils, I wanted to ask the leader of the council which of the following he was most proud of as part of the Conservative record. Is it the fact that in 2024, as we enter these local elections, that 1 in 10 people of Dudley households find themselves in fuel poverty? Or is it that families in Dudley find themselves on average £3,500 a year worse off? Or are you most proud of the 1,755 reported incidents of fly tipping in Dudley Borough? Or could it be that you're most proud the fact that Dudley is amongst the top 10 councils in the country for potholes? Or could it be that you're most proud of the junket visit to Cannes at the cost of £300,000 with 9 members of staff in attendance? Or could it be that you're most proud of cutting money from community forums? Or could it be, Councillor Harley, that you're most proud of taking our authority to the brink of bankruptcy?
Councillor Harley to respond, please.
I'll tell you what we are proud of on this side, Madam Mayor. Still having the lowest council tax anywhere in the West Midlands, despite the financial pressures that all local authorities face up and down the country. We're proud on, Madam Mayor, that we've got more money going into roads maintenance, not just this year, but next year. And next year, thanks to this Metro Mayor, Andy Street, who secured a near record £8 million additional funding to be rolled out next year. That's why people should vote for Andy Street on May the 2nd, because he's a Metro Mayor that delivers, Madam Mayor. We're also proud, Madam Mayor, of the largest rollout of CCTV that this borough has ever had. And all members in this chamber have benefited from that CCTV rollout. Also proud, Madam Mayor, that we're delivering a £1 billion regeneration programme. They said they couldn't get money to deliver the Metro in full. We've got it. We had to do it in stages, Madam Mayor, but we've delivered it. They said we couldn't get the funding for the new bus interchange, Madam Mayor, but we got that funding. They said we couldn't get the money, Madam Mayor, for the very light rail test track, but we've got that funding. We knocked down Cavendish House. They said we wouldn't do that. We delivered on that. We've delivered a rollout of green waste collections, and although it's regrettable we're asking people to pay, the take-up seems that people agree with us that this is a good deal, £3 a month for a full year-round service. Madam Mayor, there's a lot this administration can be proud of, unlike the party opposite, who, when they were last had full control of this authority, cut frontline services to the bone. And if they were to get control on May the 2nd again, that's what they do, and they'll look round and blame someone else.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Lowe, to have your supplementary question ready.
I have indeed, Madam Mayor. I think we've got under the skin there quite successfully, haven't we, colleague? You can tell there's a...
Let him have his time.
Following on from the question and the response, and following on from the contribution made earlier, in order that each and every one of the 72 councillors are aware, will you support me asking the independent board to ensure that the confidential papers that are being discussed this evening can be shared to everybody within this council chamber?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Lowe talks about breaching confidentiality. He served under a Labour group leader that was found to have leaked blue papers to the press, and it was proven that it happened. No wonder he scuttled off to the Middle East. To answer the question again directly, Madam Mayor, he talks about a breach of confidentiality. There are two ways the DLUC, the Department for Levelling Up, can assist local authorities if they require that additional assistance. There are two things they'll do. One is they will lend you a bag full of money, probably to make a lot of people in the authority redundant. Secondly, and you'll have to pay that back at some point. Secondly, the other thing they will assist with is avoiding a referendum to increase council tax over that referendum limit. So that means if you are upset at me for withdrawing that request to DLUC for additional support, that can only mean two things, Madam Mayor. If you want to continue to ask DLUC for that additional support, it means only one thing: an additional council tax increase of 10% this year and next, and a £10 million loan from DLUC to help put people on the dole. That's not something I support as leader. It's not something the Conservatives in this chamber. But if you want to support it, Councillor Lowe, we can put on our leaflets a nice new nickname for you, Mr 20%.
I now invite other members to indicate if they have any questions for the leader, cabinet members or chair. Councillor Rebecca Collins.
Madam Mayor, I've been forwarded the response that this council made to a Freedom of Information request earlier this year. The response, Madam Mayor, is quite disturbing, as it confirms a reckless spending of residents' money by a senior member. And I'm rising this evening to make full council aware and to ask the leader to support my recommendations. I'd be grateful if you would allow me to set the context of this question before actually asking it. It is entirely necessary in this instance, Madam Mayor. Members will be aware that there exists under the Constitution a process for dealing with complaints made against members by other members.
Where possible, these are resolved as you would expect, in a straightforward manner, in-house. Provision does exist, however, for a member to insist that the matter is referred to solicitors outside of this council. Madam Mayor, you do not need me to tell you that this route is not going to be cheap. I have the figures here, spent by one member on a vexatious complaint against another. The member refused mediation or to entertain the idea of resolving it in-house. They insisted, I repeat, insisted that the matter be returned to external solicitors. I note the member concerned is here in the chamber, Madam Mayor, and I know this because it is me whom the campaign of lies, supposition and hearsay has been aimed at. I'm not foolish enough, Madam Mayor, to name that person tonight. I will confirm, however, the member concerned has spent in the last 18 months over £36,000 on external solicitor fees. I have declined interview, having been told that due to my accessibility needs, that it would cost our residents an additional £6,000 in fees. I made this choice despite my legal right to an accessible interview. This expenditure is wasteful, unnecessary, irresponsible, and shows a complete lack of judgment on behalf of the member concerned. It undermines the integrity of all elected members in the eyes of the public and comes at a time when this administration is doing all it can to stabilise the councillors' finances. Will the leader endorse my call for this member to apologise to members, do the decent thing and stand down with immediate effect? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Call on Councillor Harley to respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Without getting into the finer details of this particular issue, I think it's regrettable when we don't allow the monitoring officer to do their functioning role as that monitoring officer who should deal with those complaints internally. I think it's regrettable that this complaint has headed to external solicitors, obviously at great cost to the authority. And I just think it's a bit rich for politicians to stand up in this chamber and lecture this side on financial accountability when they're quite happy to rack up a near 40 grand bill for our council taxpayers for a complaint that really should have been dealt with in-house.
Councillor Collins, do you have a supplementary question?
Will the leader also support where it exists at the insistence of a member that the matters are to be referred to an external solicitor, that they cover the expenses personally and not willfully and irresponsibly waste residents' money in this way? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Harley, to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's a very valid point, Madam Mayor. This is obviously an expensive exercise for the local authority. I think it's unnecessary spending, and I would certainly, as and when we are returned as the controlling group on May the 2nd, I will be asking the Chief Executive and our legal team to look at this as to see whether we can force members who wish to go down this route in future. And there may be valid reasons why they do, but if they want to, they shouldn't be using hard-pressed council taxpayers' cash to fund their own legal expenses. They should do it themselves. So yes, I would support that.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Daniel Bevan.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Can Councillor Caulfield provide the Council with an update on the number of residents that are now subscribed to the green waste collection and how this will impact the service moving forward? Thank you.
Councillor Caulfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bevan. Well, this truly is a success story that's come off on the back of a really difficult decision that this Conservative administration had to make over the last few months. Charging for green waste was always going to be contentious, but I was convinced as Cabinet member that if we offered our residents the most cost-effective and the best service available out there, that they would certainly subscribe to it. And I suppose, you know, as many of the members know, we've got 133,000 households in the Dudley Borough. 120,000 of those have got green bins. And from the Environment Directive, we put forward £1.3 million worth of savings for that service. So to achieve that, we needed a quarter of those residents to sign up to the service. And it's obvious by the numbers that our residents obviously supported the service that we were offering and for the price it come for. And you'll be glad to know that by the time we come to the 1st of April, 47,000 households had already signed up to the service. We were averaging 2,400 households a day signing up to it. And we can allude to the numbers that the leader mentioned earlier on.
when we reached 54,000 households in the borough, that actually gave us £1.94 million, not the 1.3 that we intended to. So that's actually given us another £644,000 at that stage to invest back into services. By reaching those numbers, we haven't only reached this year's targets, but we've also reached year 2 and year 3. So, you know, we can obviously say it's a tremendous service we're delivering. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. Do you have a supplementary question? No supplementary question. So, Councillor Ryan Priest, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Cabinet Member for Highways. I decided to do some research about potholes recently, so I thought I'd go to the experts, and I found a small resurfacing business based just outside the borough called Harley's Surfacing. On their blog, they claim that it is cost-effective to fix potholes as soon as they are spotted. Of course, that will be news to residents of Intended Street, of Shaftesbury Avenue, and anyone who travels along Park Road past the McDonald's in my ward, where just one of the 3 potholes have been reported and the rest await repair. They were all reported months ago. This issue of being cost-effective is what I want to ask about. Because I find myself reporting potholes that were already repaired once a few months ago. I'm finding that in places where there are a cluster of potholes, only one has been filled in. So what poor workmanship is costing this borough thousands and thousands of pounds. So what mechanisms are there in place to make sure that the job not just gets done, but that it's done to a standard to make sure that we don't need to come back out shortly afterwards? Thank you.
Councillor Caulfield to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Priest, for your question. Well, before I answer it in depth to what we're offering now, we really need to look back when the Labour administration had charge of Dudley Council back in 2016. And Councillor Lowe was very proud of cutting the highways budget was the first one that he cut. And I remember then, back in those days, before I decided to stand as a councillor, to argue as a concerned resident that cutting the highways budget would certainly, you know, long-term damage the infrastructure to Dudley's roads, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. But if we go now to 15 months ago when I was appointed Cabinet Member, having 35 years professional background in heavy road transport and road networks, one of the key things that I wanted to deal with was the quality of our roads, to make them safer and the best quality that we possibly could. And so, April last year, we launched a new proactive repair and maintenance programme, which brought on new repair practices, which prior to that were only carried out reactively. So to have a reactive service, filling potholes, we were never actually ever going to achieve anything. We were only going to repair in detriment in the roads as and when they come up from complaints from residents or from councillors. So this new proactive service was put in place. And obviously I could probably speak to you all night about the procedure that we did there. But the new ways that we repair the roads now are this. Where before we used to reactively coal fill potholes, we no longer do that now. We now do highways and carriageway patch repairs. So where you've mentioned, you know, on certain roads there are a collection of potholes, we don't repair those individually now, we cut out the whole piece. And we don't just plane off and cut back now 40 millimetres like we used to before and use 6 mil asphalt, which was a quick repair. We now go down 100 millimetres.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. Sorry, you've come to the end.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, but he did ask.
Is there a supplementary question? Councillor Caulfield. Councillor Ryan Priest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thank Councillor Caulfield for letting me know that everything's in a good state of affairs, because that's definitely news to me. And I can tell you that I'm talking about potholes that exist in my ward. So this idea that you've come along and you've repaired them, it's nonsense. That's not what's happening. This is an issue that comes up I'm aware I haven't been in this chamber very long, but I did spend 5 years trying to get elected. And in those 5 years...
Can you ask a question then, please?
I've never had potholes come up more on the door than we do at the moment. So what is going to change to stop this issue? Because what you've just said may exist in this chamber, but it doesn't exist in reality when I speak to residents in my ward.
Councillor Caulfield.
In my reply, well, one of the potholes you mentioned by McDonald's has actually been repaired with a patch repair. But the process we've got in place now is funding. This financial year, we've got £4.6 million that we're going to invest in highways. 2025-26, we've got 7.5 million, and 2026-27, we've got 7.5 million. So out of the 740 miles of roads in our borough, I'm sure over the next couple of years now, we're going to see vast improvements. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. Councillor Simon Phipps.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for the Leader of the Council. Could the Leader of the Council please update the Chamber on the progress made with the adoption of the Dudley local plan?
Councillor Harley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That plan is progressing very well. The consultation process concluded some weeks ago. Members will be glad to hear that it was largely probably not noticed by the vast majority of the public because there was nothing contentious in there, having removed the vast majority, well, all of the green belt. And with Dudley producing a brownfield only policy, residents clearly agree with that. And I think the greatest thing residents can do when they agree with you is they don't respond to surveys and consultation processes, unlike the last one, where we had 20,000 just from Wall Heath and King Springford alone. So at the moment, Madam Mayor, to answer Councillor Phipps, our local plan, the Dudley local plan, is on track to deliver on time. We poured a lot of time back, and I think the people of the borough would be thankful that we came out with a Black Country plan when we did. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Simon Phipps, do you have a supplementary question?
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Leader of the Council, Halesowen residents were affronted by the submission of several sites in Halesowen that had a historical, environmental and conservational significance to the countryside. They were submitted to the Dudley local plan and Black Country local plan, Black Country plan call for sites process. Does he agree that it should be up to local representatives to make decisions about where sites are suitable for development in this borough and not anybody else? Is it the case that changes to the National Planning Policy Framework have cemented that principle in making sure that we can continue to make our own decisions as part of the Dudley local plan? Does the Leader share my concern that the Labour Party's policy would force local authorities to build on their greenbelt even though you do not agree with it? And will he commit to making sure he continues to stand up for our greenbelt, as I believe every member on this side of the chamber has done steadfastly?
Madam Mayor, before the Leader chooses to answer that supplementary question, the 30 minutes allowed for questions is expired. It's within your gift as to whether you allow the Leader to reply to that supplementary or not.
Be quick.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Coming out of the Black Country plan has allowed us that independence to say, hands off our green belt and the vast majority of our green spaces. Had we remained in the Black Country plan, there would have been diggers on Holbeach and the Triangle in my ward within a few months of now. That is a fact. And if we'd have stayed in the Black Country plan, although in the original submission of the Black Country plan, the green belt in Halesowen was widely spared. However, on appeal at the inspectorate, I believe the developers would have won on appeal because they would have said, you're building in King Springford, you can meet your housing numbers, you're short on industrial land, why aren't you building industrial units in Halesowen? And we would have lost. By having a brownfield only policy, Madam Mayor, we ensure our green belt is protected. And yes, Councillor Phipps, as while I'm Leader of the Authority, unlike the guy opposite, I will continue to fight for the protection of our green belt and contrast that with the position of the Labour Party nationally, with Keir Starmer saying that he will make it easier for local authorities to build on green belt.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harley, I think that's enough now.
Clear. Vote Conservative and protect the
Councillor
green belt.
Harley.
Vote Labour and build on it.
Councillor Harley. The 30 minutes allowed for questions has now expired. Any members indicating to ask a question can either send it in writing or raise the question at the next appropriate meeting. There is no urgent business, so that concludes this meeting of the council, and I hope to see many of you here in May.